Well, we shall begin with a passage of Scripture, and that passage is in 1 Timothy 6:10. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some have coveted after, they have erred from the faith, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. That's 1 Timothy 6:10. I can remember years ago when I was in English class with that battle axe of a teacher that I had in high school, Miss Best, who was never married and was very harsh and yet firm in her rules of grammar, for which I'm thankful today. She quoted this particular passage of Scripture, and nobody in the class knew where it came from. I had no idea it was from the Bible. I never read the Bible. I was never taught the Bible at home. I was never taught the Bible in school. This is well after the removal of the Scriptures in 1962. And thus, I was raised in a pagan Roman Catholic culture where we were all ignorant of the Bible, and furthermore, we didn't care. Well, in 1 Timothy 6:10, we learn a maxim here that states that it's the love of money that's the root of all evil. It's not money. Money can be used for good or for evil, just like a gun. A gun can be used for good or for evil, just like a TV. A TV can be used for good or for evil. It's just like a bottle of wine. It can be used for good or evil. It depends on how it's used. And if we use it in moderation, and if we use it with wisdom, as we're exhorted by the Scriptures, it will be for the glory of God. There is nothing wrong with money. And we should labor with our hands that we might acquire money so that we can give to those in need in our family, in our community, so that we don't have to be dependent upon a government to give us bogus, worthless currency or extend to us credit. If we had a prosperous middle class, we would have businessmen that were making profits, and I would have a businessman friend, and I could go to him and say, now, my friend, my white brother here, you've been blessed in your business. May I get a loan from you? And he'll say, okay, I can loan that to you, Eric. Here's my interest rate. If you want to do this, we'll sign a note, and it's a done deal. Why should I have to go to a bank to get a loan? If we were permitted, if we were not so hamstrung, there would be many wealthy men. In Lancaster County, where there's many Mennonites and many Amishmen, many farmers, there's 9,000 millionaires. That's the way it ought to be. Every one of us ought to be a millionaire so we can help each other out. And the government would never have to extend any credit to us because we don't need your credit. We have private wealth because we ordered our lives aright. God blessed us. We were able to make money. We were able to save it to give to those in need. Not to hoard it up like some vicious, evil pope hoarding his money in 100 banks across Europe and North America. And then that wicked sinner has the audacity when some poor little Mexican child comes up and says, oh, Holy Father, he has no shoes on. And the Pope says, oh, bless you. When he has many a cathedral with lots of gold in the shape of coins in those cathedrals, the Pope could easily take care of the poor in Mexico. But oh no! He's a vicious hoarder, a King Midas, who wouldn't give anything to anybody unless it was in exchange for your soul. And this is what he's done to us, white men, through Wall Street in this last couple of weeks. The Pope is the greatest lover of money on the face of the earth because he is advised by that Jesuit general, Adolfo Nicholas, who's another great hoarder of gold and silver and controller of the currencies of the world, so that they can ultimately control everything we think, do, eat. That's their end game. So now, understanding that the papacy has a tremendous love of money, we shall turn to Wiley's fantastic 3-volume work, one of the greatest Protestant histories ever written, called The History of Protestantism, Volume 2, Chapter 8, under the chapter of the Jesuits. Page 412, quote, "The soldiers of Loyola are about to go forth. Before beginning the campaign, we see their chief assembling them and pointing out the field on which their proudness is to be displayed. The nations of Christendom are in revolt. It will be theirs to subjugate them and lay them once more, bound in chains, at the feet of the papal see. They must not faint. The arms he has provided them with are amply sufficient for the arduous warfare on which he sends them. Clad in that armor and wielding it as he has been at pains to instruct them, they will expel knowledge as night chases away the day. Liberty will die wherever their foot treads, and in the ancient darkness they will be able to rear again the fallen throne of the great hierarch of Rome. But it is the service. But if the service is hard, the wages will be ample. And the saviors of that throne, as the saviors of that throne, they will be greater than it. And though meanwhile their work is to be done in great show of humility and poverty, the silver and the gold of Christendom, and I say, nay, the world, will in the end be theirs. And they will be the lords of its lands and palaces, the masters of the bodies and souls of its inhabitants. And nothing of all that the heart can desire will be withholden from them, if only they will obey him, the Jesuit general." Unquote. You see, my white brethren, the Jesuits want all the gold and all the silver and all the money and all the lands and all the people and all the labor and everything under their control. That's always been their game. And that's what they've done to us Americans now through their power on Wall Street. Now let's take a look at their power on Wall Street, because this is part of the refutation I'm going to be using for a debate that I will be in with a gentleman named Ogner on next Wednesday. And he will be putting forth the proposition that the Jews run the New World Order, the Jews run the banking. I will be putting forth the proposition the Jesuit order and the papacy run the New World Order, and the Jesuits rule the banking. Now let's take a look and see. There's an article on the web called Cluster Stock. The title of it is Treasury Seizing Stakes in 9 Big Banks. We read, "Well, now we know why the heads of the 9 families were summoned to Washington today, to have capital shoved down their throats. The Treasury will be taking preferred equity stakes in 9 big banks. The WS says, despite the fact that many didn't want the money." Well, who were these banks? Now remember, it's the Federal Reserve that creates credit out of nothing. It's created $700 billion of credit out of nothing, with no collateral, and it doesn't need to. Isn't that nice? It's kind of like magic. Yeah, the Federal Reserve boys are magicians. They're financial magicians, and all of a sudden, at the stroke of a pen and at the entrance of a figure, they can create credit, and credit then, when it's used, is transmitted into wealth. Now that is priestcraft. Well, which banks are they talking about? Well, the list is as follows. Number 1, Goldman Sachs, $10 billion. Number 2, Morgan Stanley, $10 billion. Number 3, J.P. Morgan, $25 billion. Number 4, Bank of America, $25 billion. Number 5, Citigroup, $25 billion. Number 6, Wells Fargo, $20 to $25 billion. Number 7, Bank of New York Mellon, $2 to $3 billion. Number 8, State Street, $2 to $3 billion. And number 9 is Merrill Lynch, remembering that Merrill Lynch is now part of Bank of America. So let's take a look at these 9 banking institutions and see now if they're run by the Jews or if they're run by white Gentiles. and white Gentiles that can be connected